So today we're going to talk about one of the most important concepts in boxing, or they say one of the most important concepts in boxing. Whether you're starting or whether you're pro, they say this is something that you need to be doing to get better at boxing. And that thing is shadow boxing. What is shadow boxing? By definition, it is you fighting your shadow, but what is the definition and application, right? What is the reason why the top pros look so good at shadow boxing? From your Andre Wards, your Roberto Durans, your Sugar Ray Leonards, Bernard Hopkins, Ali, we can go down the list. Why do they look so good at boxing? The simplest way that I can go ahead and explain it is shadow boxing is literally fight choreography. It is you going through things that happen during the fight or could potentially happen during the fight. That's why the more experience you have, the better that you look at it. A lot of times, or what I would do is with people who just start fighting with me, whether they have an extensive background or they're completely new, the first thing I'll have them do is shadow box. The reason why is you can tell a lot of someone's skill level by where they shadow box. And here's one of the reasons why. A lot of coaches will go ahead and say, hey, you need to get better at shadow boxing. You need to get better at shadow boxing. What I wish I knew in the beginning is that you need to learn how to shadow box. Everybody tells you need to do it, but they don't really go ahead and tell you how. That's what this video is for. And we're going to talk about 3 foundations of your shadow boxing. And then we're also going to talk about the application of it. Foundation number 1 is going to be your footwork. The reason why we start with your feet is because that's what's attached to the ground. If something else was attached to the ground and allowed us to move, we'd talk about that first. But our footwork is going to be our foundation. So how you move around the ring to get in position to be able to throw your punches or get away from your opponent, it all starts from the ground up. So you do need to work on the individual skill of footwork to get better at it. A couple things that you can do is just by simply moving, which is box pivots, shifts. You can go side to sides. Those are all drills from my system, but moving around the ring is very important as far as for how you step, how you move, right? And that's from either stance, whether you're a southpaw or whether you're an orthodox fighter. But it's gonna start with your feet. So that's gonna be application number 1, or step number 1 for you is what you do with your feet. That is going to be a line of offense for you, which means how you get in position to hit your opponent and hurt your opponent, and also a line of defense, how you make sure that you don't get hurt by your opponent. But that's gonna be foundation number 1. Foundation number 2 is gonna be what you do with your head. Understanding that your head is one of the targets, so it's very important to understand where your head is, so you can understand where it can go, so you can't get hit. Once you understand where your head is, you can now understand where your opponent's head is. And a couple things that you can do with that is just understanding your base and your foundation, right? So in some people's systems or your coach's system, whoever you're with, they have front foot, they have back foot, they have position 1, they have position 2, they have neutral position, but all those have your head in a certain position. So I can be on my front foot, my head is in a certain position. I can go ahead and be low on that front foot, my head is in a certain position. I could be neutral with both heels on the ground, my head is in a certain position. I could be neutral low with a little squat, my head is in a certain position. I could be back foot, my head is in a certain position. Back foot low, my head is in a certain position. Same thing as far as if I was southpaw. So foundation number 2 is going to be understanding what you can go ahead and do with your head, because that is another line of offense and that is another line of defense for you as well. The last thing that we're going to focus on is what you do with your hands, right? Now, what you do with your hands goes into your punch technique, making sure everything's correct, but it's also involved in what you're doing from a blocking standpoint, right? So those 3 foundations for you are going to be what you're doing with your feet, what you're doing with your head, and what you're doing with your hands. Now, the how is, how do I do these things correctly? Because we already explained the what for you. Now, the final part for you is, when do you do those things? Why do you do those things? Where do you do those things? Who do you do those things against? That is the application, and that is your IQ. That's the reason why the more experience you have, the more choreography you have seen, the more patterns you understand, the more positions you understand, the more when you shadow box, you can envision where your opponent is at. But if you're brand new to this, it is very hard to visualize all those patterns, all that choreography. So what I suggest is watching a lot of film, It's the reason why they have walkthroughs for football practice. It's the reason why they have walkthroughs for basketball, because these things are what happens in your actual field of play, right? So how do we get good at shadow boxing? We recognize and we work on the patterns that we see when people actually fight, and we work on the individual skills and those 3 foundations that are necessary to get better at shadow boxing. Once you have all that, slow down. It doesn't have to go ahead and be fast. Focus on the choreography that you have, even if it's just moving around the ring, shooting a jab, and understanding where your opponent is at. You can start from that slow foundation. As you get better at understanding that, now we can go ahead and maybe add some more punches in, include defense in, include some feints in, including some more combinations in. All thinking about what your opponent might be doing, because shadow boxing at the end of the day is really just fight choreography. And I wish I learned a long time ago that you need to learn how to shadow box by breaking all those things down. But that's part of the gloves and games method and the gloves and games system. If you want an entire system of how you can get better at boxing overall, I have that for you as well. But I would love for you guys to ask questions, because at this point, that's the reason why we make more videos. This shadow boxing video was made because somebody asked me a question and we made a video on it. But I'll see you on the next one.